I'm in a strange mood, I'm
This is
sorry.
Mike Dennis.
Okay, I don't know, actually I'm gonna start out over here. And grab, I want one of these, I really want one of these little things. I'm just young enough so that I really don't remember what it's like not to have electricity. Except for 5 days during the ice storm, and except for 3 days up in Maine when we went without electricity. Some people were without it for 5 weeks in the middle of a Maine winter, which is why everybody has wood stoves. So up in Maine, one of the things that really got me was we'll have blizzards with 18 inches of snow and howling winds, and the lights don't even flicker. And then we have a beautiful August day, 82 degrees, which is about as warm as it ever gets, and the power goes out. You know, we don't know why. That happened to me a number of years ago. I was getting ready for school. Power went out, and I said, well, that's okay. I guess I won't watch TV. So I'll do my schoolwork. So I got out the electric typewriter, turned it on, and nothing. Didn't even think about it. It's become so much a part of our lives. How many of you here remember life before electricity?
I remember my grandparents.
Okay. For me, like I said, I grew up in the city, so we always had it. But I'm going to share with you just a little bit of the introduction from this book, which Jim Jacobus, president of Inter County, gave me when I talked to him about this presentation. Beautiful book, I love it. Imagine, if you will, just kind of close your eyes and imagine. Some of you don't have to imagine, you've been there. Life without electricity. Well, you're already off to a late start, as there's no electric alarm or snooze button to make sure you rise and shine by 4 a.m. Why so early, you think to yourself, as you stumble out of bed, feeling along the walls for the light switch, when you suddenly remember it's not there. You feel on the tabletop with your fingers in search of a match to light the coal oil lamp and candle. Welcome to 1935, you sigh to yourself. Now, if you're in the city, of course, you have electricity a lot sooner. What you see in front of you this morning by lamplight is a different kitchen indeed. There's no stove with burners and dials. There's no refrigerator freezer, no ice maker or in-the-door water dispenser. There's no toaster or electric skillet, and there's no electric coffee maker. Now what? One of your first tasks is to start a fire in the wood stove to cook breakfast, as well as warm up the house. No wonder it was so chilly this morning, scanning the walls for a thermostat one last time, only to realize there was none. This goes on considerably about milking the cows in the dark because you didn't bring a lamp into the barn, it was too dangerous, and so many other things. Just realizing that, you know, by 10 o'clock in the morning, you put in a whole day's worth of work, and you still have that much time left to go because you don't have electricity. People in the cities did, but people in rural areas in particular did not, and that's what the topic of this talk is about. I call it Bringing Electricity to Farms because I really couldn't think of anything better to title it. That's what it's about, bringing electricity to the farms. And the topic is the Rural Electrification Administration here in Boyle County. It was a national program, as we'll see. And because I'm a stamp collector, I had to show you that one. Do you remember the old days when stamps were only 22 cents? Okay, that was only in 1985, so it wasn't that long ago. But I think the stamp really portrays what the REA was all about. You've got a farm, and you've got power lines. There we go. I really want to thank Mr. Jacobus at Inter County for giving me, he did not lend, he gave me this copy of the book, which I just love. All kinds of great pictures in it, and I'm sure the library has a copy, so you should be able to check that. Okay, what was going on in 1933 with the farm situation? City dwellers already had electricity, running water, sewers, and telephones. I'm not sure when electricity came into Danville. I know in many parts of Maine it was the late, well, the town I lived in and taught in for years, it was 1898. they began to generate electric power from the falls along the river. And that was the birth of the largest electric utility in Maine. By 1920, every city had its own electric system. Many of them had running water. Danville's running water system from the very early days, and the sewer system as well. Farm dwellers usually had none of these. Now, if you start to figure, why not? Bringing electricity to a city with lots and lots of people provides lots and lots of customers. Bringing electricity to the farm might provide one customer every mile or two. And no company that depends on profit is going to go out into that area. That's why the area where I lived in Maine, even though we were half a mile from downtown, we couldn't get cable. There weren't enough people. Nationwide, about 10% of the farms had electricity. The number was higher in New England. The number was higher on the West Coast. The number in the South was much, much lower. In Kentucky, only 3% of the farms had electricity. I believe only Mississippi and Georgia had a lower percentage of electrified farms than Kentucky did. And again, this is the point. The private electric companies couldn't make any money by moving electricity, building electric lines out into the countryside. They needed a certain number of people per mile in order to make it profitable. So until you have massive increases in population in the rural areas, which is not likely to happen by 1920, you're not going to get electricity. Well, in May of 1935, as part of the New Deal, President Franklin Roosevelt issued an executive order. People complain about presidents overreaching their power. Well, this is one executive order that was probably a good thing. He signed an executive order that created the Royal Electrification Administration. Now, the REA was very, very different from your traditional power companies. This map shows, it's a very poor copy of a very bad microfilm from the Advocate, but the figures are there. In Maine, about a third of the farms had electricity. In Tennessee, 3.6%. I thought that was 36 for a while, but you can't see. 2.3 in North Dakota. In New York, I think that's 52.7. But that was the situation nationwide. And you can see the areas that have less than 10%, fewer than 10%, excuse me, of their farms are in white, and that includes the whole South and most of the Great Plains area. Okay, the lead was taken by an organization called Boyle County Farm Bureau, which is still around. And their idea was, hey, you know, with this new REA thing, maybe we can finally bring electricity into the rural areas of Boyle County. In January of 1935, the Danville Messenger, I've got to be careful, because the Messenger and the Advocate were two separate newspapers at that time, announced the beginning of rural electrification, of a rural electrification survey in Boyle County. Before they could do anything, they wanted to find out, after all, if there was enough interest among farmers in the rural areas. So, the Farm Bureau in August of '35 began discussing extending the power lines into the rural areas. Like I say, Danville already had power. I've not really been able to find out if Junction City or Perryville did, but I don't believe so. And the State Farm Bureau Convention discussed the idea a little bit further in January of '36. Notice we're talking about a whole year going on here from the first discussion to the state getting involved. And it moved very, very slowly. And the map that I just showed you shows the percentage of farms that have electricity. Okay, well, trying to figure out what to do and how to go about doing it and how to set up an organization to accomplish this. You know, you're not just going to go out and start a new electric utility, like KU, for example, because the money just isn't going to be there to support it. So what Congress did was to pass the Royal Electrification Act, we get all these initials, REA again, which set up a system to lend money to electric cooperatives, and that's the key, to build power lines into the rural areas. A cooperative is usually a non-for-profit business. It's usually owned by the people whose services, to whom it provides services. There's usually a membership fee, and because of a number of other different things, it's run like a business, but it isn't really. It's more like a credit union, for example, which is also a co-op, or the Grange, which is a co-op. In April of 1836, an engineer from the REA met with the Boyle County Farm Bureau, I love my initials, to discuss how they could accomplish this, this extension of electricity. And again, Farm Bureau surveyed to find out how many farmers wanted electricity. Not everybody's going to want it. And I've got a really neat slide here that shows some of the objections to it, which should make us laugh nowadays. Or maybe not. Meetings began in Perryville and other communities. There were actually Boyle County Farm Bureau meetings all over Boyle County, Marion County, Mercer County, Garrett County. Like I said, the Boyle County Farm Group took the lead in all of the surrounding counties. So what are we going to do? September of '36, the Farm Bureau asked Governor A.B. Happy Chandler, I love that name, to propose legislation clarifying the laws on cooperative electric companies. Apparently, this is something totally new for the legislature in Frankfurt, so they really had to clarify and update and maybe even pass whole new sections of law allowing cooperatives to form. Again, you don't just organize a business. And the new legislation in Frankfurt that would allow the creation of co-ops was passed in January of 1937. We're almost 2 years now into the REA, and we're only at the point where Frankfurt passes laws allowing co-ops to form. Okay, we're taking a lot of time here. Meeting in March of 1937 in Perryville had representatives from Marion, Casey, Lincoln, Gary, Washington, and Mercer counties. That meeting was packed. Imagine a 300-person meeting in Perryville nowadays. I don't even know where they meet. Maybe in the school gym or something. That may have been where it was. So obviously, there was enough interest among the people who were going to be served by this new co-op. And in April of '37, the Advocate headline reads, 379 Boyle farmers want rural electricity. Right there in the headlines. And thank goodness the Advocate and the Messenger are now on newspapers.com. Mary, thank you, thank you. Okay, the plan. Plan was approved. The plan for this local co-op was sent to Washington. Application was made to the REA headquarters. And the way it would work, I don't know whether I have that here further, but the way it would work is that the government would lend money to the co-op. The co-op would then go out and sign up farmers that pay their membership, and they would buy their electricity from the co-op. The co-op would make enough money to pay off the loans. In theory, that's how it was supposed to work. Kind of a different way of doing business. Non-profit, the company did not make a profit other than to pay off expenses. The application mapped the areas where the lines on the poles would go. This is a totally new concept for anything outside of Danville. Where are these lines going to run? Where are the poles going to be put? And it's interesting, when we were living in Butchertown, we had a limb come down on a power line. We were told by the people, I don't know whether it was inter-county or, I think it was inter-county. They said, well, when they strung the lines back in the 1930s, they just went straight cross-country, over hills and valleys and just out through the woods. And in front of our house, we have like 3 lines converging. There are telephone poles everywhere and wires everywhere. So I'm not sure how much planning there actually was, or if they just strung lines wherever they felt like stringing them. They arranged to buy electricity wholesale from an existing utility. And in this particular case, this new co-op is going to buy its electricity from Kentucky Utilities, which is a for-profit business, and they're going to buy it wholesale. And that was one of the things that the law stated, was that electric power companies had to sell electricity to the co-ops at wholesale prices. And by the way, this is not the only co-op in Kentucky, there are dozens of them. And the same things apply to all of them. Okay, Ball County Farm Bureau President E.F. Newland and William H. Rogers sent the final application to the Royal Electrification Administration. Now let's see if it gets approved. Garrett and Marion counties also submitted applications at the same time. So what does Washington do when they get 3 different applications from 3 adjoining counties? Of course, they combine them into one project. Okay, so Marion, Garrett, and Boyle were combined all into one project. And there's you'll see the results of that in a little bit. Okay, doubters in the rumor mill. Okay. What was wrong with rural electricity? Well, farmers didn't see how the co-op would be able to pay off its bills. Okay? I mean, these people are hard-headed businessmen. They know where the money's coming from, they know where it's going, and they really weren't sure that the electric co-ops were going to be a financial success, not enough to be able to pay the bills. And if they can't pay the bills, are your farms going to be taken as collateral? So they were really worried about that as well. If you sign up for membership and the co-op goes out of business, do you lose your farm? Many were afraid of electricity itself. They said, oh, it causes fires, it kills birds, it causes cow's milk to sour. I was just reading an article about a huge solar array out west, and what it does, it focuses the sun rays on a molten salt tower, which then heats up and provides steam. And the problem is, when the rays are focused on the tower, any birds that fly in front of the tower are cooked instantly. So people are objecting to that because it kills birds. To which we say, well, maybe we should get rid of cars because they kill birds too. But you know, electricity was the great unknown. People were still experimenting with electricity in the 1920s, 30s, trying to figure out what it could do and what it couldn't do. Electrotherapy, sticking cathodes in your brain to try to shock you. That type of thing was still going on. So there was a lot of fear. Many people didn't want their trees removed. Well, the REA people explained that if a tree blows down on your line, then your neighbors don't get power. So kind of lay a guilt trip on people and allow them to remove a few trees here and there. $5 membership was an issue with some people. We're talking 1937. $5 was a lot of money. A friend of mine years ago told me that a girl knew her guy was serious if he spent a nickel on a Coke for her. I have a hard time getting over that. But if you didn't have the $5, you could pay in kind. You could pay with a note, a $5 note, a promissory note. You could pay with chickens. Pay with anything you want. I don't know what REA is going to do with chickens, but at least they accepted payment in kind. So you have this this guy from the co-op going to the farm, talking to the farmer, trying to convince him to hook his house up and to sign up and pay the $5, and explaining all the wonderful benefits of electricity, and the farmer's still there, not sure, not sure. And in the meantime, while the farmer's objecting to it, very often, his wife is handing over the $5 to join because she knows the benefits of electricity. I found that very, very amusing. That's in Mr. Jacobus's book. Many wives just turned over the $5 before the husbands finished arguing, and that settled it. Okay, that was it. So women take the lead in rural electrification in Boyle County. Okay, what were the early plans for this new company? The REA approved plans for Boyle and the contiguous counties, which I believe would have included Mercer and Marion, Garrett, Lincoln, possibly Casey. The counties right around Boyle County. There were 379 applications in Boyle alone, with a total of 566, and the cost was going to be $108,000. $108,000 to wire 566 farms. Okay, and again, we're talking $1937 here, when a dollar actually meant something. The new company had to have a name, and it was called Intercounty Rural Electrification Cooperative Association. You see why I just call it Intercounty? It's a lot easier. And lest this sound as though this is an ad for Intercounty, it's not. Intercounty is a totally different animal from Kentucky Utilities, okay? It is a co-op, it is not a traditional business. Okay, private utilities, at this point in time, we're beginning to build out in the outlying areas. Those are called spite lines. So if a private utility builds a line from Danville to Perryville, now Intercounty doesn't have any customers that they can hook onto their lines. So those are done without permission of the Public Utilities Commission, and those were stopped. Each company, in effect, had its own geographical area that it could service, and Intercounty basically got the rural area of these counties. In May of 1937, this is when the Public Service Commission in Frankfurt ordered private utilities to sell to the co-ops at wholesale prices. That law was passed. This is when it was implemented. So now Intercounty is going to be able to buy the power. They're going to be signing people up. They got an initial loan of $50,000. The final allotment was going to be $376,000 for 369 miles of wires in 6 counties. Again, that seems like 369 miles of wire. We're talking wires, telephone poles, we're talking salaries, we're talking, everything else that goes along with setting up a whole electrical system for $376,000. Well, if you stop to think, again, $1937. The REA would not pay for right-of-way. And the reason for that is they said, hey look, we're bringing you electricity, okay? You can make toast now with an electric toaster. You don't need money from a right-of-way. And you can have coolers for your milk and all this other stuff. Vacuum cleaners, not the hand pump ones. The articles of incorporation were filed, and the co-op did buy its electricity from KU, which I believe it still does. And one of the things that we were told when we first moved here, if we had a choice to go with Kentucky Utilities or Intercounty, to go with KU because it was cheaper. And other people said, no, go with Intercounty, the service is better. Well, when I talked to Mr. Jacobus, he said there's only about a 3% difference in the price now, that they're both very competitive. So that's not an issue anymore. Boyle area project to cost $376,000. Yeah. Obviously, this is big news. You have a major headline in the Sunday paper. Saturday paper. So that's what the plan called for. We're going to have 1,512 customers. Now, the number of customers in a lot of these figures, it keeps going all over the place. I've seen one figure that said, well, there were 2,000 customers in November of 1938, and somebody else said there were 1,500, and their numbers are all over the place. I don't know which ones to believe, so I'm just going to throw them all out there. Intercounty Royal Electric Cooperative was born June 1937. Again, over 2 years after the REA was originally proposed by Roosevelt. And construction actually began in the summer of 1937, so now things are gonna move. We've got all the preliminaries out of the way, now things are gonna move. The project supervisor, Harry L. Achy, or Achy, I don't remember how to pronounce that, held meetings all over the place. He met at the Mud Meeting House in Mercer County, at Mount Freeman Church up near Persimmon Knob. High schools in Forkland, Gravel Switch, Parksville, Perryville, and Mitchellsburg. I was not aware until I did this that I did not know that Mitchellsburg had a high school. Apparently it did. Did you know that Mitchellsburg had a high school?
They had one room, but I don't know about a high school. Do you, Carolyn? I don't think they did.
They may have had high school grades in that one room.
Possible.
I'm not sure.
But in the 30s?
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's another project. Okay, so anyway, Mr. Achy or Achy met all over the place. And now that you have a company, you need an office. And this building, if you don't recognize it, I'm not surprised. It's still there, but it doesn't look like that anymore. Somebody added a second story to it, but the building is still there. First office was on the second floor of the Federal Building, which is now the Community Arts Center. And they moved to 145 North 4th Street. So as you pull out of the library parking lot onto Broadway, turn right, turn left, and this little building is behind the house on the corner. Okay, I had to check that out when I first saw it. It's still there, it's still cement block, it's now 2-story, but it's still there. That was the first inter-county office. The Advocate reported construction had begun in Perryville, and that's going to be key in a minute. Starting out, there are so many wonderful pictures of rural electrification out there. I tried to focus on just the ones in Boyle County, but what was going on in North Dakota is what was going on in Perryville. What was going on in Georgia is the same as what was going on in rural Illinois. So I'm not sure where this picture was taken. There are several here that I'll show in a minute that are Boyle County specifically. The REA required an average of 2 homes per mile before they would actually pull the switch and energize the line. That's half a mile between houses, which is, figures quite a distance, but they've got to have at least enough customers to go. Many homes were wired before the lines passed by. This is a very busy time for local electricians who were often hired by farmers to come in and wire their homes. There's no electricity out by the road yet, but by golly, when it comes by, they're going to be ready. So a lot of them wired even before there were power lines going by on the road. Oops, hit the wrong button. The first approved rates. I'm not sure what the rates are now, but I'm sure they're not this. First 40 kilowatt hours were $2.75. The next 40 were 4.5 cents. The next 120 were 2.5 cents, and over 200 was 1.5 cents. So I'm not sure if that's per kilowatt hour, but you figure when electricity first came, people weren't using a lot of it. You didn't have all the electronic and electrical gadgets we have nowadays. Somebody said once, if you want to see how much electricity you're using in your home, turn on all the lights and then look around and see how many blinking red lights and yellow lights and green lights and blue lights you have all over your house. Because they're there. We just started unplugging a few things. But back then, you had maybe one light in a room, maybe one outlet in a room. And nowadays, you've got 17 electronic gadgets plugged into one surge protector. So they didn't use a great deal, so the power bills weren't all that much. And again, stop to think of what you're getting for it. Okay, imagine life without electricity. Then, would you be willing to pay $15 a month for electricity? Most people wouldn't. Growth and expansion. As inter-county grew, they built a new office This one, I'll get to in a second, but they were putting 80 miles of poles, 60 houses, and they were anticipating pulling the switch and energizing the first homes by May of 1938. Again, 3 years after the REA was founded. And again, these numbers are all over the place. You'll hear 80, you'll hear 360. But the office moved to 467 West Walnut, just east of the current 471 West Walnut office of Jeffrey Baird. That building is no longer in existence, but that was inter-county. And you notice the gas pumps up in front. I love those. As of May, 8 employees, 1,500 customers. Again, the number of customers varies quite widely. But here we go. We haven't even powered the lines yet. We already have 1,500 customers. Remember, there were 379 who said they wanted it. Who were the first customers? And these are both from Mr. Jacobus' book. This is the power plant in Perryville. It's no longer there, but there's a state historical marker there because that was the first one. And pictured is the family that was the first in Boyle County in rural areas to be wired. Pictured is the W.G. Pruitt family and the Uncle Wayne family, owners and tenants of the farm near Perryville that was the first in Boyle County to receive current from inter-county. Pictured left to right are Mr. W.G. Pruitt, farm owner, Mrs. W.G. Pruitt. I love how they didn't give names of married women. Miss Frances Wayne, Betty Pruitt Gilbert, granddaughter of Mr. and Mrs. Pruitt, sitting in Miss Wayne's lap. Mrs. Uncle Wayne, Mr. Uncle Wayne, and Miss Mary Elizabeth Wayne, sitting in front of her father. This is the first family, rural family in Boyle County to get electricity. Any of those names sound familiar?
Pruitt.
They
There's some
don't
Pruitts
today.
still living in Perryville, but that, you know.
Okay. 3 p.m. Friday, the 10th of June, 1938. Switch was pulled, electricity flowed to the Pruitt farm. And Wayne Pruitt, a mile north of Perryville. I'm not sure exactly where that is. I don't get out that area that much. Electricity reached Forkland in September of 1938.
Mm-hmm.
So we're building out. We're building out from these substations. We're building out all over the county like a spider web. And this is Mr. H.E. or Achi. From what Mr. Jacobus told me, he always dressed in solid white. No matter what he was doing, he always dressed in solid white. You could tell where he was. This is in front of the building on West Walnut. He was originally, I guess, from Mississippi, from what I understand.
He's a Southern gentleman.
And work was extended to Harrington Lake and Wells Landing by April of 1939. So again, moving into the eastern part of the county. And this is Henry H. in front of the office. I guess he was quite the stylish dresser. Things are going so well by the 3rd of May, 1939. I don't expect you to read that. Okay, I just put it up so that you can see it. Local REA co-op expands into 10 counties. Front page, whole front page is just devoted to the electrification of Boyle County. I guess that tells you something about the level of importance it was to people. And keep in mind, this is a city newspaper, okay? So we got users of electricity find service to be a necessity. Aim is to serve 2,000 farm homes. Greeting from President Rogers to members. Urge wiring for tenants' houses. REA lines now cover 427 miles. So the whole front page was devoted to this. This was a big deal. It really was a big deal. New lines laid on the Stanford Somerset Road, Big South Fork, Little South Fork, Quirks Run, Houstonville, Bryantsville. So again, spreading out from beyond Boyle County into neighboring counties, bringing the wonders of electricity to fire families in all of those areas. I find it interesting, Big South Fork, Little South Fork, if we're talking about the Amish area down there in Casey County, that people were so excited to get electricity and the Amish move in and no electricity. That's kind of ironic in and of itself. What kind of a business venture was this? Well, whoops, I didn't do that one right. Of 24 Kentucky co-ops, Intercounty was one of the most successful. They paid off their loans early. Farmers were worried they wouldn't get them paid off. They were paid off early. 601 miles of lines, 1,606 customers covering all or parts of 10 counties. You think of it as Boyle County, but it's not. Farmers were using electricity for many different projects, such as cooling milk, filling silos, chicken brooders, electric hot water heaters. All those things that are not only making life easier and more pleasant for the housewife, but also making life more useful, safer, more efficient for the farmer. When you have electric milk coolers, you can keep the milk colder. That's going to be important. Now here's how they paid their bills. Customers were given a stack of postcards, and once a month you went out, you read the meter, and you filled it into the postcard and mailed it into the company. Do you remember that? Remember doing that? Yeah. And that was done, from what I understand, right up until the 60s or maybe even early 70s, from what I understand.
Yeah, we marked our own meters when I was living in the country for a while.
Yeah,
Then they started being,
I can't imagine doing that. Maybe that's why in the math books when I was in elementary school and junior high, they taught you how to read an electric meter.
probably.
I remember that at the time because you're going to have to read your own meter. And think of the way they do it now. Okay, they don't even have to come to your house. They do it all by electronics. But yeah, you mailed it to the company, and then they figured out your bill and sent you the bill, and you paid it. And you might have paid the bill along with sending in your next postcard. I don't know if they ever checked. I don't know if the company ever checked.
They
them.
did. They checked me once after my husband died. They thought I was doing whatever to make the meter use less, which I wouldn't have had any idea how to do it. I just didn't use much because I didn't have a furnace. I used just
Right.
oil heat. And I didn't stay home that much, so I didn't cook much.
And you
But
still
it was
don't stay
funny, I
home.
just thought, no, I still don't. But I just thought it was funny. My neighbors did too.
Yeah.
I think they even polled the neighbors.
But I mean, think of the trust that the company had in the customers. Okay? Think of the trust they had. I guess I'm one of those who would report it honestly, but I'd imagine there were people who would cheat. I don't know.
But the meter is gonna accumulate, so.
Yeah, so if you say, it's less than it was, at some point in time, within 1 month, you're gonna get socked with a big bill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So,
think they even changed my meter.
I'm wondering what was wrong. Well, one of these days, I'll tell you a story about our water use when we were living in Butchertown. Okay? It's similar, only the opposite. Okay, so by June of 1942, they had in August of 40, they had 30 more miles of line planned. But by August of 1940, materials for expanding rural electrification were becoming scarce because World War II was on the horizon. And once the war started, there was very, very little expansion, except for one important fact. Okay, I don't know where this is. This is from Jim's book. Anybody recognize the building in the background? I sure do.
Is that
Junction City?
That almost looks like Forkland, the building, the roof
Of what?
at Forkland. When did they get it in Forkland? This is in the 39 or 38?
Yeah. But anyway, can you imagine trucks like that going all over the place, hauling telephone poles, all over the county?
Looks like a school.
That was my first thought, was it was a school. But what school?
Well,
I thought it might be Parsons.
could be Parable, you know. All the buildings were similar.
I don't know. That's one of the things I love about the old pictures. You look at these things and you're not sure, but
A little store on the left down there, isn't
yeah, yeah. And there's an interesting little building over here that has a false front. I'm not sure. Mary, that's your next research project. Find out what building that is.
On it.
Okay. Intercounty displays modern appliances that farmers can now use. Look at the modern appliances. We have a refrigerator. Okay? Yeah. We have a radio. In the next issue of the newsletter, I actually clipped an ad for a 1941 Philco that reminds me very much of the 1938 Farnsworth I grew up with. Oh my goodness, look at this, a vacuum cleaner. You don't have to haul the rugs out and throw them over the clothesline and beat them anymore. A fan, it appears, and is this a stove?
Yes.
I'm not sure what that is. Not a TV, I'll tell you that. Yes, Ann.
I might share that I've heard my mother say that before, in rural Adair County, before they got electricity, they had a radio, and it ran on batteries.
Yes. Yes.
And do I remember correctly that the 1930 census asked the question, does this household have a radio?
Either 30 or 40.
Is it
30
40?
or 40, yes.
I thought it was
Yeah.
30. It's 30?
30? Yeah. Do you have a radio? That's
So
how
that was high
important-
technology.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting, interesting. But yeah, I mean, all the modern electrical equipment and appliances that make the wife's job so much easier now, all because of electricity. I mean, I don't think there are a lot of people today who would tell the power company to cut them off the grid. What we're doing now is making our own with solar power and wind power and such. But okay, work trucks in front of the Presbyterian Church, the first Presbyterian Church, where the Speedway parking lot is today. I like this one because it shows the men and the church, and REA looks like ancient, really ancient Greek writing. And I love this one
It's a lightning strike.
because it removes farm drudgery. Electricity removes farm drudgery. Yeah, that does look like a lightning bolt. Yeah, and it's fairly crudely painted, but these were the REA intercounty trucks as they looked around 1938, 1940. Coming to Parksville. REA power lines make possible the enjoyment of radio for Mr. and Mrs. George Marshall of Parksville. The tiny house is shared by two families paying alternate bills. Two families, one family paid it 1 month, the family paid it the next month. And I was just working on the George Marshall family the other day. So I was kind of pleased to see that. Now the other thing, and you mentioned battery-powered radios. Do any of you remember gas-powered refrigerators before electricity came through? Yeah, so you could have had a refrigerator, but it wasn't electric, okay? A lot of people up in Maine, if they have summer cottages on the lake where there's no electricity, will still have gas-powered. In fact, a fellow teacher of mine and his wife lived in a non-electric house for about 8 years, and they had all gas appliances until they had a baby, and she got tired of a gas washing machine. So then they got wired. Okay, growth and war. In 1940, 1,475 farms. Fewer than 1 out of 10 had running water, but 1 in 3 had electricity. Right? And I've often wondered why, coming from Maine, where you have city water if you live in the city. But like I say, we were half, 3/4 of a mile out of the city, and we had a well. And all of our neighbors had wells. Why way out in the Williwax of northern Casey County do we have public water? And our next door neighbor said, well, it's because all the water around here either tastes of salt or oil. So, but fewer than 1 in 10 had running water. 1 in 3 had electricity. One farmer was asked in 1940, why do you have a car but not a bathtub? And he said, well, you can't go to town in a bathtub. There's your priorities. The inter-county office moved to 420 Main Street, and rural electrification helped to slow, I should have said, the migration from farms to cities. During the Depression, many people moved from farms to cities in hopes of getting jobs in the cities. Now that there's electricity in the rural areas, that migration is somewhat slowed. Not ended, but somewhat slowed. When World War II came along, that was it. For a while, there was to be no more expansion. Copper was for the war effort. We didn't even put copper in pennies during much of the war. You remember the steel pennies? Right? And the steel nickels weren't nickel either. They were something else. Electricity was extended to 51 more farms in 1943. Not because the REA thought 51 more farmers needed electricity, but these farms are producing food for the war effort, and that's why electricity was brought to those farms. So it was a war production idea. The role of electricity on the farms, I've often heard this said about the Civil War, or the War of Northern Aggression, if you prefer, that one of the reasons why the North won was because of mechanization. As soldiers left the farms to go to war, because of mechanization, they were still able to produce food. The South wasn't mechanized. Well, here, the role of electricity means that the farms can still produce while we have millions of men in the armed services during World War II. So we're still producing thanks to electricity. Food production is up, spoilage is down. Inter-county moved to Houstonville Road, and this is near the end here. They moved to Houstonville Road after World War II. Number of members is up over 7,000. New building, 35 employees. And today, they're still at the same address, but evidently, where the building was is now the parking lot in front of the building that is. Present building, 62 employees, almost 25,000 members in 10 counties again. Quite the expansion. And just for a few statistics here, and these are rough numbers, okay? Oh, why did I put a comma after that one? In the 1930s, the number of members, the number of miles, kilowatt sales with 8 employees, and going right down through, and you can see, if you're a visual person, I should have done a graph for this, but I think you can see the numbers pretty well. Yeah, 65 employees now, 462 million kilowatts. What's that? 462 billion watts or something, and that's again from the book. So starting with that first farm in Perryville, to covering all or parts of 10 counties now. That's the story of rural electrification in Boyle County. And just a list of the sources that I used in particular. Richard Brown's History of Danville had some information on it. Falkland Heritage had, again, some information on electricity coming to Falkland. And of course, Jim Jacobus's book, right here, was my major source, book-wise. And, oh, I don't know how many issues of the Messenger, the Advocate, and the Advocate Messenger I used. But we certainly used up our bandwidth the first 3 days of the month by doing it. Okay, that's it. Welcome to Rural Electrification. And if you would allow me to, I'll do the Works Progress Administration at some future date, because I got lots of good stuff on that too. Questions, comments, anything? Anything?
I got one question.
Yes, Charles?
Was that propane gas, and if it was, who provided the gas and how was it distributed?
I have no idea.
No, I
on
don't think
propane.
it was, I think it was liquid gas. Like,
I'm just asking, cause I'm just wondering.
yeah, I believe it was, we had a wash machine that we used.
Yeah, but the
Okay.
refrigerators wouldn't have used liquid gasoline.
No.
The wash
I really don't know.
That's all good.
Um,
Wash machine.
It seems like it was
Gasoline
liquid
motor.
in the wash machine.
Yeah, you'd almost
It's been a
think
long
you'd have to
time
have some kind of
ago.
a tank, but
Yeah.
I was real small.
I don't know. That's another area for Mary to research.
Huh?
Ringer
Ringer.
water.
Mary, how do propane refrigerators get their propane?
That is going to be a question for my intern. He'll get it tomorrow.
Okay. Yeah, Mary.
I just got a quick question on that. From 1950 to 1960, there were only an increase in like 600 customers.
Yeah,
I was wondering what happened just in those 10 years, because you look at the other years and there's quite
okay.
big jumps.
It's a very small increase in customers. Not all that much of an increase here, but 3 times the electricity used. I would suspect television.
Could be.
I
More
wonder
TVs.
why the number of employees went down.
Oh, yeah, yeah, I mean, that's
I
a
mean,
huge
from 49
increase.
to 38 in that
Yeah, yeah,
period.
yeah, and then they dropped a little bit, but TV became important and popular between these two numbers here. And the early TVs took huge amounts of electricity. You had all those tubes you had to heat up and everything. So that probably is one reason why this number jumped so much. And by the time we get up into here, now we're seeing computers. And now we're seeing flat screen TVs and Netflix and other things. So just take a look at how much electricity each one of us uses a month and compare it to, an electric bill from the 1950s or the 1940s. Carolyn?
When did they start using electricity to heat houses? They started that at some time.
Good point. Good point. I don't know. Mary, another project?
The all-electric homes.
Yeah,
thing.
most of the houses built up until this time, I don't believe were electrically heated. Heat pumps beginning to come in. I never heard of a heat pump before I moved here. That's not practical up north. But I would suspect those would be coming in during this time period as well. And that would be an interesting, again, an interesting bit of research to figure out what was going on in the electric appliance world, and what were people using during each of those time periods that they weren't using before.
We built a house about 1970. It had radiant electric heat
Okay.
all through the ceiling. And they gave us a big electric discount and bonus for doing that in Bergen at that time.
Okay.
68.
68? Okay.
68, yeah.
So they were just getting started then, they were trying to promote
Yeah.
electric heat.
Well, when I was growing up, there was a house on the corner of Bernadette Street and Saco Street that was billed as a house of the future, the all-electric house. And everybody marveled at how everything was wonderful with it, The apartment house, the apartment complex I lived in for a while started out all electric, 132 apartments, all electric. And what they found out was it was Central Maine Power's cost, couldn't afford it. So they switched the whole thing over to oil. Electric rates in Maine are about 3 times what they are here, about 3 times. Plus you still have heating oil on top of that. So yeah, I would think that heat pumps, more electric homes, beginning in the 70s and 80s.
Larger homes.
Larger homes, absolutely larger homes.
Air conditioning.
More lights.
Yeah, air conditioning.
Air conditioning, I don't know about microwaves if they.
Sorry?
I don't know about microwaves if they use that much electricity, but I guess they do.
Not using it
About
that
as much as a
much.
light
Huh?
bulb.
You don't use it that long,
No, it's
Yeah.
true.
like a
Yeah.
heating.
Yeah, the microwave will use much less electricity than the electric range will, obviously.
Yeah.
And of course, people with electric stoves are going to be getting those in this time period. Microwaves beginning to come in about here. So there's a lot of interesting things that we can extrapolate from just those numbers if we start to figure out what's going on during that time period. I'm thinking of all kinds of projects I can work on now. Wow, as if I don't have any already.
You need something to do.
Okay, all right, Guy?
I got an extra to add to all the different technologies. My dad was born in 1900. He grew up on a farm. They had electricity. They had a Delco power plant in an outhouse. They had a battery house. Shelves with big glass jars that were storage batteries that this little generator would charge up from.
Yes.
Now that's a little bit different.
Some of those Delco units, I understand, are still going.
Really.
Yeah, I've heard that some of them are still going.
Where was
I
that?
think that's what
Wayne
they used in Portland
Wayne.
before they electrified it, maybe.
Could be,
Some-
yeah. Yeah.
Some man down there had one, I can't remember his
Yeah,
name.
I've seen one, was it a couple of years ago, I saw one down there. But yeah, so it's not that people in the rural areas didn't have anything electric, it's just that the wires didn't go by the house. If they had it, it was self-generated. And think of, what we're going back to now with solar panels on the roof and turbines, we're going back to self-generating.
But we're gonna have enough electricity to charge our cars.
That's another thing, electric cars won't be using much gasoline, but boy, we're gonna need electricity. Yeah, yeah.
Somebody told me that they thought that early days Parkland High School had a Delco power plant. That school was built in what, 27?
27?
Yeah, so it took a little while for the wires to get down there, but evidently they had for certain uses.
And even when the gym was built, that was either just before or just after
Mhm.
electricity reached Forkland.
Yeah,
So,
30s, middle
so
30s.
yeah. So what would you do at Parksville High School before 1937? There must have been something there. I don't know. Lots of interesting, and that's what I love about doing a project like this. I mean, I had a blast putting this together, but now I'm thinking all the other things that are coming because of that. Where else can we branch off? What else is there to learn about Boyle County? And thank goodness for the Advocate and Messenger Online, because that's where a lot of our new information is going to come from. It's always been there. It's always been here right upstairs. But I can't research microfilm in the library at 2 o'clock in the morning. Okay, whereas I can do that now.
I can't either.
And Mary, what's the latest on the papers
The
online?
rest of it should be up within the month.
Within the
I
month?
honestly, I was checking today to see if they were up, but yeah, anytime now, yeah. I
Anytime?
cannot wait, so,
Okay, well, I'm going to use so much bandwidth at home, I'll just bring the laptop in here and use it.
might as well.
It
Yes, yeah.
sounds like to me that the electrification program slowed down during the war
Yes.
here. But other places, I believe it came to a complete
Yes.
stop.
Again, the program continued if there was a need to bring electricity to a farm to produce food. If it was for the war effort, it expanded a little bit, but it was not planned to expand at all. That was the plan. Yeah, and in many other areas, it did absolutely stop. The REA is still going. It's not called the REA anymore, but it is still in existence. and still providing, still updating and changing and such, so. Anything else?
You know, you said it was not in, it was already in the cities, but
Yes.
my grandparents lived in a town in North Carolina. They didn't have running water or electricity in this particular section of
Uh-huh.
town. Is there any section like in Danville that maybe they would have ignored for a time period?
That would be a
Because
great
this would
question.
have been a cotton mill, there was a cotton mill, and these were houses that were built for the people who worked in the mill.
Okay.
So,
I know West Danville was later than the rest of it, but they were considered a separate town too for a long time.
oh really?
Yeah,
Is that?
yeah. That would be interesting to find out what areas of Danville have electricity and when they got it.
I mean, you had to be
KU might have that in its
Probably in
records.
The library will be closing in 15
Folks, we're
minutes.
closing in 15
So
minutes.
make your final selections and bring them to
Anything
the
else?
desk at this time. Thank you.
Great, well, thank you for your attention, and I